Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have a very special guest. Jayla Siciliano is the CEO of a bi-coastal luxury short-term rental company and the host of Seed Money Podcast. With 25 plus years of experience, she founded Bon Affair, which appeared on Shark Tank, and secured a deal with Mark Cuban. After facing setbacks, she now helps early-stage entrepreneurs build sustainable businesses that balance success with lifestyle. Jayla, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on. I have to ask about Mark Cuban at some point. But before we get into what you do now, tell us how you got here. Are you from a family of entrepreneurs? Are you the first? Where does that entrepreneurial spirit come from?
So my dad had his own business, but it was like a small business. But he always had tons of flexibility. So different than a lot of small business owners, he wasn't grinding all the time. So I grew up seeing like, oh, if you have a business, you spend all this time with your family and have flexibility. My mom, did a lot of his bookkeeping. They were very entrepreneurial, bought houses, flipped them, rented them. So they were always doing new things. So that definitely got, ingrained in me at an early age.
Yeah, appealed to you. I don't know how you recognize that, but I wish if you can send that energy to my children so they would recognize that because they think I do work a lot, but I'm like, I've never missed a field trip, one of those guys. So, well, cool. I know, in the intro there, we talked about setbacks a little bit, and everybody's got like ups and downs. And I think a lot of people that, like, for instance, see posts on LinkedIn where people are celebrating their success. They go, oh man. And then they get jealous. And I'm like, you don't even know how difficult it is. Like, nobody sees the tears. Nobody sees the blood, the pain, all the other stuff. How has your definition of success evolved since starting your journey?
Oh man, it is like done a 180, I will honestly say. So when I was in corporate for my 20s, like in basically my 20s, I partied, traveled around the world and worked for really fun companies. And then in my 30s, I became an entrepreneur and it was a huge slap in the face from, why the reason I started it was, oh, I can create a product. I can grow it. I can sell it for a bazillion dollars and then just chill. That was kind of my idea of success at 30 when I quit my job to start a business, a company. And 10 years of grinding, not paying myself, just going, at some point waking up and going, whoa, the dream is not the dream. I'm going to have a heart attack. This is not healthy. This is not good. Like, I need to make a change. This is not what my vision was. And now, so lots of like pivots and turns, and to finally figure out that now I truly define success. Like currently it's like, how much do I get to travel in a year? How much time do I get to spend with my kid and husband? Like quality time, not just like being on my phone, but in the room, which is challenging at times. And then also like, how can I maximize the money that we do make? So we invest smartly, we do real estate. So building up a sustainable life, both from a, energy, health, and financial standpoint is really how I define success now, which is a big change from what it was when I was 30.
Yeah, I love that so much. I love that so much. And that we're tying it with your quick story about your parents too. Because I for me too, it's much the same in that way. And I hope other people listening too, it's like there's even a study that I cite, it's old and it's outdated. And I hope NPR does another study like this, or that they cite it, this is like 20 years ago, is after like $75,000, your rate of happiness is not really increased too much. Like the stuff is pretty temporary. And that at the end of the day, like, what's your baseline for that? So maybe you could dive into also how is your redefinition of success and how you operate with your husband and your child, and what you do in trying to avoid heart attacks is how you start your day. I feel like it's very important for folks like ourselves, is like, well, how are we starting our day, and how does that influence the rest of it?
I mean, I start my day a little bit. I don't have like a crazy morning routine. I don't wake up with an alarm clock. That's another definition of success. I like
Mm.
to wake up when I wake up. But I wake up early, but it's basically with the sunlight. I wake up, just kind of like hang out for a little bit, have my coffee, usually read something positive in the morning. I'm a big mindset person. I can tell you what I don't do. I don't read the news. I've deleted all my social media apps off of my phone. Like Facebook, I don't follow anybody personally. I have the groups I'm in. So if I'm opening it up, it's just like positive group stuff that I'm
Oh,
in. So I really have gotten good at um, pushing out like negative distractions. And of course, not perfect, but I've made a really solid effort to do that. So I'd say more than what I do, it's a lot of what I don't do at this point in my life. And I'm always listening to podcasts to stay motivated and just keeping, positive, inspiring stuff in my head. I think it's critical to do that.
yeah, yeah. We were already sort of leaning into this next question, which is, what do you think is something that's commonly overlooked from the outside public who is not entrepreneurs, but maybe wants to be entrepreneurs or is envious of entrepreneurs or whatever, that is not talked about enough or struggle?
I mean, I think it's what you brought up kind of at the beginning. Failure is part of it. It is absolutely part of it. And I think, and it's interesting having an 8-year-old right now and like, they take a test and they see they're so hard on themselves. They lose a baseball game and it's like, and that is part of it. And you learn in those moments and you can't get down on yourself. So you have to be okay with failure and you have to really celebrate the fact that you kind of made it through some of the failures. It took me a long time to be able to really, truly feel that, not just tell myself, but to actually feel that was a different level because society tells us, even still, I see VCs posting all the time, like they're basically implying if you're not a unicorn, you're a failure. And it's just like,
Mm,
oh my God, it is so rare to be that, one-off company that, grows to 1 billion and sells for gazillions. And anything below that is considered a failure. That's so ridiculous. So
it is.
I think failure is part of it. And I do think I really appreciate what you brought up at the beginning. Like everybody shows the wins on LinkedIn. Um, all those people have had a gazillion little mini failures and some really massive big failures. So I think that is overlooked. You brought it up, and I really, and that's one of the reasons I do my podcast to really try to peel back those layers and show, yeah, it's not all roses. It's tough, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that on your show. That's exactly why we do this show and why I had you specifically as a guest on this show. I mean, among many other reasons. Yeah, it's sort of like it's like beauty standards, unachievable beauty standards for entrepreneurs, but it's
Totally.
unachievable, it's
Oh
just
my
like
God,
that.
that's such a great analogy. I love that. Yeah, it's like, it's they only show the Victoria's Secret, entrepreneurs on LinkedIn. Yeah, totally. Like, how much airbrushing is going on there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh
exactly.
my God, that's funny.
I have 4 children, but my youngest is a 16-year-old daughter, and I've tried to tell her that from the beginning. I'm like, hey, like I've even there's even a study came out on Facebook recently or about Facebook or some news about it where they were like, if it was tracking when young women were deleting selfies, and then it would. I know it's so evil. So your mindset with social media is awesome.
Mhm.
So on that mindset note, is there any skill or a sense of mindset? And maybe you already talked about the mindset part, or is there a skill that you wish you would have developed earlier on in your journey? And then the reason I ask questions like that, looking backwards, is and maybe you agree, is that I like to I hope that people learn from us in stuff that we're lacking or that we've failed on, and then we're helping build better entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think, the only skill set is I wish I had started reading stuff about mindset a lot earlier because it's not something that happens overnight. So I think if your life is not exactly where you want it to be, just pick up books, start absorbing, and trust that over time it will take hold and have an effect. Because it's not like one book is going to change your life. It's not one thing. It is, I think, shifting your mindset and all of that. It takes time. So the only thing, I just wish somebody would have given me some of those books or some of those tools or pushed me in that direction. Like I didn't have mentors, advisors who nudged me that way in my early 20s, or even
Hmm.
like, even though my dad was an entrepreneur, they weren't like into that kind of stuff. Like they didn't expose me to anything like that in high school, middle school, college. Nobody, professors weren't telling us to read stuff around mindset, like had no idea that was even a thing until my 30s. So if I had started that, imagine at age 15, I think I would have absorbed a lot of it a lot sooner, because as we get older, we get stuck in our ways. So I think it's even a little bit trickier, it can take a little bit more of a nudge to actually shift. So yeah, I just would have started really like diving into all that. And I think it's fascinating. So I love it now. It's just a very fascinating concept, but
Yeah. Well, to be fair to you and even I guess myself is I didn't read. One of the ones that put me in the best mindset, I felt like I didn't figure it out until I was about 40. I'm 42.
Mhm.
And I have multiple businesses. I have like four businesses if you count the nonprofit. Super busy, just like yourself and a lot of other people. And it was Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. So I'm wondering, I try to recommend that as much as I can to folks, regardless of gender, because I think it's just so brilliant. What do you have one book that really sticks out to you?
I love, well, so there's a whole spectrum of, books. So on the far end, I love Joe Dispenza. I love his just like I think there is so much with how our brain works and energy and all of that that I have truly seen things in my life play out, that way that support some of the stuff that he talks about. Then on the other end of the spectrum is like the book Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, very tactical, like delegating, you know, um, don't waste time on things that are below your pay grade, stuff like that. So I think there's a whole spectrum where it can go all the way from like energy, if you're into that or whatever, all the way to just very tactical, how to lead, how to be efficient, productivity. So I think it's that whole range,
Hmm.
and all of that together is kind of what finally shifted me into a place where my business is where I want it to be. My life is, and of course, I'm always wanting to grow and change.
Hmm.
I'm like really, I finally reached a place where I'm like, satisfaction level with life is really high, which is took a while.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes exactly. Sometimes it takes like you living almost two generations through it to get it right. Like every generation is about 20, 25 years. I'm there with you,
Yeah.
100%. I have to ask about Mark Cuban. What was it like to work with him? And tell us maybe the story about Shark Tank. What it was like getting there, going on, and anything that resulted after that.
Yeah. So quick background. I started this wine company, Bonafere. I raised $500,000 against all odds. I went to do our first production run, lost $100,000 in inventory. Long story. But basically, it was a Hail Mary. I had an advisor who's like, you need to go on Shark Tank. And I was like, I don't want to go on that show. I was going to meet him for coffee. And I'm like, I've got to apply before I go meet him for coffee again, or he's going to ask me. So I finally applied. And then a few months later, I think it was, I got a call to go on. I was like, oh my God, now I have to go on this show. So I tend to go overboard with things and like really all about being prepared and thorough. So I watched almost every episode. I wrote down every question the sharks asked. I practiced, I got in front of people, had people firing questions at me. So I went into it. I was like, I am just going to be super prepared. I got up there to film the show and they said, we're sorry, we can't have you on today. We ran out of time. We don't know if you'll be able to come back. I was like, oh my God, no way. Like you're ready to just get it out. You just want to like have the chance. So I went home and they called 2 days later and asked me to come up. And they said, there's a 50-50 chance you'll get to pitch tomorrow. I was like, I'll be there.
Hmm.
So by the time I got in there, I was just so thankful to have the opportunity because I almost didn't have it, that I went into it with this like, I'm just going to enjoy this. It's an amazing life experience. I just got to like, enjoy it as much as I can. Now, with that, you get in there and it's a complete blur. I was in there for over an hour. They won't stop filming no matter what. they're all firing questions, trying to throw you off. But I held it, I held it together really well, got the deal with Mark Cuban. And then you walk out of there to your car and it's just like, did that really happen? Like, what just happened? So Mark's team was amazing. I have nothing bad to say about him. He's like such an incredible guy, in it for the right reasons, was really personally himself helping, even though he's got a whole team of people that does your accounting and website and all kinds of stuff. But with all that, the one bad thing about Shark Tank for me in my situation, for
Mm-hmm.
the company that I had at that time, it's almost like so much opportunity comes at you at once that we were trying to grow way too fast and we were spread way too thin. And my business regret there is I wish we had stayed focused online, direct to consumer only. We were going into like resorts in Vegas and bars and restaurants and spas and Whole Foods and Costco, like all these crazy, just trying to go everywhere. And we were under-resourced to be able to do that. And Mark was financing inventory runs, but he just has a rule. He doesn't keep doing equity investments.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out to raise more money. And it was kind of a red flag having, a billionaire on your, board who's not putting in more money. And people were like, wait, why?
Mm.
So anyway, it became really challenging to like raise another round of funding. And this was about a few years before, or a couple years before White Claw came out. So this was a new category. It was a lighter, healthier wine spritzer. So there were just a lot of challenges in that space. And ultimately, I was at the point I was like, I got to transition out, and my investors all supported me. So it ended, not the way I wanted it to, but it could have been a lot worse. I
Yeah.
didn't get sued, I didn't end up. I have lots of friends who ended up in much worse situations with companies like that. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so that's
It's
it. Sorry, in a nutshell, a lot of, but it was a great experience, Shark Tank
oh,
overall.
I'm sure. And like, were you nervous when you got up? Most nervous ever in your life, or maybe not? Just curious
On the
how that.
show?
Yeah, on the show specifically.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, but again, I was so prepared that that kills a lot of nerves. So, like, when I'm helping people prep for raising money and pitching now, I'm like, you have got to prepare because you got to be confident. You got to be calm, and you can't let the nerves get to you. And the best way to avoid that is just being super prepared. But of course, yeah, I mean, I would not want to do it again. Let's put it that way. I don't
Okay.
think I'd want to do it again. I'm
Yeah,
glad I did it, but yeah, I'm surprised I did it. It's an intense experience.
I'm sure. Yeah, I know. My business partner and I used to be obsessed with the show. As entrepreneurs, it was just so fascinating. So, well, maybe, in regards to raising money for capital, I think there's a huge, like, it seems like a mystical journey. It's like, how do you, so unpack for us maybe how it isn't so mystical, how it's not, like, how do even people start? If people are listening to this and no matter what kind of business that is that they're listening to about this, that they have is, how do you get in front of people? Like that's probably the first, I would think the first step is like, how do I identify who I can even talk to about this? And then maybe they're working with somebody like you to help coach them. What are like the basic steps? If if Jayla was talking to younger, and what is the perfect advice you would give your former self?
Well, and this is the reason I started the podcast because so much of the content out there is from the VC perspective and it
Mm-hmm.
skips this like human piece of early stage, where your head is at. So if you have a business or company, product, whatever it is, and you need capital to grow, the very first thing is really you don't need to do a big formal business plan, and no investor is going to want that. But for yourself, you really do have to take the time to sit down and write like at least an executive summary,
Mm-hmm.
because that's going to force you to think through what's my strategy? What do I need? Is this fundable? What do I have that's appealing? What is my competition? How do I really stand out? So you really need to understand like where your business is at, kind of benchmark yourself. And then it really comes down to, I think, putting together some loose financial projections to figure out how much money do I really need? Because you don't want to go out and ask for the wrong amount, right? So once you get that figured out, it's putting a basic pitch deck together. There's tons of resources. The biggest mistake I see people make is putting way too much information on their pitch decks. I can't get over with all the resources out there. People just still try to throw up all their information on the pitch deck. Nobody reads all that. So once you have like a pitch deck or, and your kind of strategy and you know how much funding, and even that can be challenging to do. So that's kind of one of the things I'll do is like talk with people to figure that out. Because when you're in your business, that can be hard to figure that out, right? What do
Mm-hmm.
investors want? Am I fundable? So after that, it really comes down to networking. So my tagline on the podcast is how to raise money if you're a normal person and don't live in Silicon Valley, right?
I
So if
love
you live
that.
in if you live in Silicon Valley, yes, you go to all the Silicon Valley things and you raise your money. If you don't live in Silicon Valley, it really just comes down to there's a few things. You could join an accelerator. There's a lot of incubators. Some of those are really hard to get into, some aren't. Start networking in your local community and just start putting it out there. Go to an entrepreneurship meetup. And when someone asks you, what do you do? Oh, I'm in the process. I'm getting ready to raise money for my company. And, if you happen to know anybody in this space who could give me feedback, I'd love to chat with them. So you also want to be building up relationships with investors before you go out to actually pitch them. And there's so many variables, right? Like how soon do you need the money? I raised a $500,000 with no sales, no experience in the industry I was in, no track record as an entrepreneur in 2008 in a recession.
Mm.
And it was through networking and finding private investors who were interested in what I was doing. So it just takes like asking for introductions and then more introductions. Now there's so many tools like online tools where you can search OpenVC. You can actually go in and search consumer products investors, and there's all kinds of ways to reach out to them. Cold, LinkedIn. I mean, people get DM'd like over DM'd like crazy right now,
Hmm.
but it is to some degree a numbers game. So you just got to mentally prepare for a lot of no's and be 100% determined to do it. And then just start networking and, and then practicing your pitch. And it's going to evolve. So you're not going to be perfect when you start. You're going to change your pitch deck a million times. But if there's a will, there's a way, and you definitely can get the funding. If you're a decent person, have a decent business plan, and you might need to adjust your company a bit to be fundable also, and then there's the whole entity structure side of it. And, so but again, all that stuff is pretty easy to figure out. One last thing I'll say about that, you don't have to go and get a big corporate structure and figure out a valuation. I think a lot of entrepreneurs get hung up on
Hmm.
that. Well, what's my valuation?
Yeah.
You don't want to set a valuation in the beginning. So convertible notes or a safe doc are basically two ways to bring in money without setting a valuation. And you can set it up and do it in a week for like $1,000. So there's really low cost ways to structure, getting funding at the early stage where you don't have to like come up with a valuation and give away 50% of your company for 50 grand and that kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Thanks
kind of
for
an overview.
thanks for demystifying that. Yeah, and obviously everybody should go over and listen to the Seed Money podcast, and I think that's a great way. It sounds like if it was me, if I was looking to launch a product specifically, I would be 100% listening to your show and probably engaging with you in that way. We're coming up on the half hour. You've been such a fantastic guest. I have two questions I ask everybody. One, maybe it'll be a stretch because we've already talked about sort of looking backwards, but we're gonna do it again. Is knowing what you know now, and if you could go back in time to when you first started your entrepreneurial journey, what is one piece of advice you give your former self?
Um, I would have better thought through what I want my lifestyle to look like early on, from a work perspective, and making sure those things aligned. Like we put off having kids, I
Hmm.
missed weddings, baby showers, vacations, dinners. I sacrificed a lot for 10 years. And I wish somebody had sat me down and gone, here's what this path is most likely going to look like. Are you sure you want to go down that path? You know what I mean? Like, what do you want your lifestyle? Like, you love to travel, you love to go travel internationally and take long vacations. You're probably not going to be able to do that anymore if you go down this like raising money, trying to grow a company really fast and sell it for a gazillion dollars. Those two things just don't really line up. It's not realistic. Um, and there's plenty of other companies and businesses and ways to work for yourself that can better align with that. So that's one thing I wish I had like understood, or someone had sat me down and been like, and you know what, maybe I wouldn't have listened. Honestly, you know how you're so set on your
Yeah.
vision, and that's okay too. You know, that's why there's no perfect way to do things, and you're going to make, you know, we all make mistakes and pivot and do things. So anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Uh, where can people follow you if they want to get in touch about your services? We've already talked about the podcast, but any other places they should be looking?
Yeah, mostly just LinkedIn. That's the best spot. If you have questions about funding, hello at seedmoneypodcast.com. I do Fridays. I do free pitch deck reviews. So if somebody has a deck, you know, they can book a slot and I'll give them some feedback. I love doing it. It's super fun.
I'm sure it's super fun. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would love to be a fly on the wall in some of those. That'd be great for fun. It's like a mini Shark Tank. Well, very cool. Thanks for being a guest on the show, and I'm gonna send you a LinkedIn request right after we get off here. Appreciate your
Yeah,
time.
this is great. Thank you so much. Fun to be here.